we're going to get more sales taxes, more property taxes, and that's more regressive. I'd like to hear an answer, what you have in mind to equalize or make this thing fair to the people.
Not to deter from that, Bill, but we did kind of address that a little bit. Does somebody have a question maybe in another direction? And maybe you can talk personally to these guys afterwards, and they can maybe help you with that question. Cory, do you have something in a different line?
Different vein if you want it. Education?
Okay.
Cool. Legislative candidates again. News last week, good news, bad news. Good news, we've got more opportunity scholars than ever. Hooray. Bad news is we've also got a higher proportion of students going to college needing remedial math and reading. So we've got more opportunity scholars, but more boneheads going to college. And coming from the same educational K-12 system that our state funds. So legislators, could be a wide-ranging answer. I'm curious if you have any insight or speculation as to the cause of this apparent contradiction in good outcomes balanced with increasing bad outcomes, and what you think as legislators you might be able to do in peer to kick the appropriate people in the rear to solve that problem so we have more opportunity scholars and fewer remedial students coming up into the university system. What's going on in that situation?
That's a tough question, and I'm not sure I got an answer for it, but I'm going to give it the best shot I got. One thing what we need to do is start teaching our kids that are slower, that are medium class, instead of just passing some of them on because it's too much work. How does the legislature change that? To be honest with you, I really don't know. I would certainly find out. That's the first time my questions have been addressed to me. I was talking earlier before this debate or forum, whatever you want to call it, started to one of the other candidates. And we was comparing and talking about some of these, I want to say alternative schools, but it's not alternative schools. Name what, you know what I'm talking about. Charter schools that they have in some places. Maybe we need to encourage more of those. In a charter school, they get away with a lot less, and they mature a lot faster. They grow at their own speed. They are able to study at their own speed and go. So many kids are hyperactive today. My kids never worried about that because they had to work for them. But a lot of people don't raise their kids to work, and they sit down. They get bored at school because they're hyper, because they don't have enough to burn off that energy. So they get bored and they stay at an immediate level until somebody comes along and kicks them in the hind end and gets them spurred up. Now, what can legislation do about that? At this point, I really don't know. But I'll promise you, Cory, that I will find out. Thank you.
Not having a child in school at the moment. The oldest is 25 and the youngest is 19, 20. But I would blame technology. I think we're allowing too much time in the laptop and not enough time in the dictionary. I think the way that I was raised and gone to school has a lot to be said. And I think we need to utilize that a lot more often and only have specific times that we utilize laptop or computer work.
That's a good question. I think you might look at it as a byproduct of our culture. A recent book called Aftershock by Robert Rice, considered one of the best secretaries of labor that this country ever had under Clinton. He says that the trend in income is going the same way it did in the 20s when they cut taxes on the wealthy and wages were held low. People couldn't consume the production of our economy and started borrowing, the crash of '29. He said the same thing is happening in the 2000s. We cut taxes for the very wealthy, and we get more production from labor, but they're not rewarded accordingly. So what's happening is 2 family jobs, 80-some% of the women with children under 5 are working. Does that have some impact on family? Of course. So you have all sorts of stuff going on. One year, I remember incarceration costs were going at 14%, our aid to education 3%, or rate of inflation, whichever is less. North Dakota had an intensive parole system and 1,000 fewer people in prison than South Dakota. We go to these states and we learn what best practices are in other states, but we bring them back here and for some reason we can't get them passed. Can you help us on that? So, Bill's question, you know, the eternal question, we're the only state around that has taxes on groceries, and it's 6% in most cases. All other states, tax-free. That money should be spent in the economy by needy families. And every year I have that bill to eliminate the sales tax. It would be about 40 million extra money that could circulate in the economy instead of going to groceries. Thank you.
I think what you're alluding to is the erosion of our governmental public school system. I think we need to infuse some free market principles into that, get a little bit of competition going. I'd like to see us start programs where the money follows the child, where parents can make real educational choices for their children rather than open enrollment was a great first start. You know, a parent didn't want their child going to Lake Central, they could send them over to Chester. It was a great start, but I think we need to find a way for the money to follow the child through the educational system. So we could force schools to not only compete financially, but academically. Great example is Washington, D.C. They've got charter and private schools there, they've got a voucher system, and the private charter schools cost half the spending that the public schools cost. And you've got actual lotteries where people are signing up to put their children into these private and charter schools because there are not enough of them. And the government's actually looking at cutting back that program, one that actually forces schools to compete with each other academically and financially. I believe I'm kind of a victim of our public education system too. When I was growing up, I was always in the advanced classes and those weren't fast enough for me either. I'd get bored and sometimes my boredom would lead to little destructive habits. So I think we need to start taking a serious look at how we do education in the state of South Dakota and put the power back into the hands of the parents.